For years, raiders have relied on firearms to combat increasingly dangerous arc. Bullets, explosives, heavy weaponry, all perfectly reasonable solutions. The Melee Brigade believes this demonstrates a lack of imagination. The effectiveness of hammers against smaller arc has been well documented. The question was never whether a hammer could kill an arc. The question was, how big of a can we open? Following the successful completion of basic training, the Melee Brigade was authorized for its first official combat deployment. Its mission was simple: find the upper limit of hammer-based warfare. Good evening, Speranza. Several days ago, we reported on the emergence of a new militia operating throughout the Rust Belt calling themselves the Melee Brigade. At the time, their activities appeared to consist primarily of recruitment, questionable military exercises, and what witnesses described as an uncomfortable enthusiasm for hammers. Apparently, though, training has concluded. Speranza News Network has once again received footage from our confidential source within the organization, this time documenting what appears to be the brigade's first coordinated combat operations. The movement seems to be growing faster than Speranza can contain it, and if this footage is to be believed, they've begun turning their attention towards some of the largest arc currently operating topside. Their tactics are unconventional, their casualty rate is concerning, and according to preliminary reports, Speranza may be currently experiencing a completely unrelated shortage of defibrillators. Let's take a look at the footage. Small arc have never been much of a problem for a raider with a hammer and a questionable regard for their own safety. But after weeks of training, the newly formed Melee Brigade wanted to know just how far that principle could be taken. Could the same tactics work against heavier arc roaming the Rust Belt? There was really only one way to find out. The brigade's first real test came against the Leaper. Fast, heavily armored, and normally more than capable of sending an unprepared raider back to Speranza in several conveniently transportable pieces. With a coordinated group, however, the strategy proved remarkably simple. Get close, stay close, and apply hammers until the problem stops moving. The first test was an overwhelming success. For the Leaper, less so. More importantly, the engagement established the brigade's first piece of practical combat doctrine. Strength in numbers. 1 raider with a hammer is a nuisance. 10 raiders with a hammer is apparently a military strategy. With the basic principle established, the brigade began moving towards heavier targets. The Bombardier presented a different problem. Getting close was easy. Staying close was considerably less so. Fortunately, Operation Can Opener had already demonstrated one of the brigade's greatest tactical advantages. There are a lot of us. 2 targets down, and against all reasonable expectation, Hammer Doctrine appeared to be working. But effectiveness and survivability, as it turns out, are 2 very different statistics. The Bastion made that distinction abundantly clear. Unlike the previous targets, getting within hammer range meant placing yourself directly underneath several tons of heavily armed arc. This presented certain logistical difficulties. Early engagements with the Bastion resulted in notable increase in raider casualties. Fortunately, the Melee Brigade had prepared for this eventuality using another highly advanced piece of military technology, the defibrillator. The resulting doctrine was straightforward. If a raider goes down, pick them back up. And if they go down again, pick them back up again. And if this process begins consuming Speranza's entire strategic reserve of defibrillators, that's a problem for logistics. It wasn't elegant, it wasn't efficient, but it worked. And with every successful engagement, the brigade became increasingly confident that the upper limits of hammer-based warfare might actually be considerably higher than we anticipated. Then came the Rocketeer. Until this point, brigade tactics could generously be described as overwhelming enthusiasm applied in roughly the same direction. The Rocketeer required something more, though. Closing the distance meant surviving its opening barrage. Staying on target meant keeping pace once it took to the air, and for the first time, simply running towards a problem with a hammer wasn't going to be enough. So the brigade adapted.
Somebody get on it!
Yeah! There you go! Ride the bull, baby! Yeehaw! What began as a mob was starting to resemble something dangerously close to a functioning combat unit. By the end of the engagement, Operation Can Opener had already answered its original question. Hammer-based warfare wasn't merely viable against heavier arc. In sufficient numbers, it was remarkably effective. And under any reasonable interpretation of the mission, that should have been enough. By this point, Operation Can Opener had already proven far more success than anyone reasonably expected. The brigade had taken everything thrown at it, and through coordination, determination, and an alarming number of defibrillators somehow made hammer-based warfare look almost practical. So naturally, we decided to make things considerably worse. If the brigade really wanted to know the limits of this new doctrine, there was only 2 targets left worth testing against: the Queen and the Matriarch. The Queen was our first real boss test. There would be no overwhelming her in seconds. Getting close meant fighting through fire, armor, and several tons of extremely angry machinery. But the doctrine didn't change. Get on top, and keep the pressure on, and when anybody gets flattened, put another raider back in the fight. And somehow it works. Just watching a swarm of people fucking jump up with stab hooks is one of my favorite things. Yeah. A queen had fallen to nothing more than coordinated persistence and an unreasonable number of hammers. At this point, there was only one question left. Could we do it again against something even worse? By the time we reached the Matriarch, there wasn't much left to teach. We knew how to close distance, we knew how to keep our raiders in the fight, and after everything we'd already survived, nobody needed to be told what came next. This is beautiful. Fuck it, if I can't get a camera angle, I'm coming for the attack. Riot's coming in. Riot to reinforcements. Somebody. I love just seeing, we're like insects, I swear, just climbing on top, getting inside their skin.
Beautiful.
Field Order 1 had asked a very simple question. How big of a can you open with a hammer? And it turns out, we still haven't found a limit yet. If you stuck around this far, I'm going to assume this kind of nonsense is probably up your alley, so if you'd like to be part of the next operation, make sure you subscribe, hop into the Discord, and keep an eye out for streams. I'd recommend turning notifications on so you don't miss anything. Saturdays are currently our main event days, but there may be a few surprise deployments here and there. Nearly 300 raiders have joined the Discord in just the last week, and this is quickly turning into a genuinely awesome little community of like-minded idiots looking for people to play with in new ways and cause a lot of problems topside in a fun and jovial fashion. So enlist, resist, and if you've enjoyed these videos or you've been part of one of these operations yourself, share your story, share them around, spread the word, hype the video. The bigger this gets, the more ridiculous these operations can become. We've got plenty of time to cause trouble before Frozen Trail. Until next time, take care, Raiders. Stay safe up in the Rust Belt. Riot out.